I'm looking for my slides. When they come up, you're going to see something that has a big warning sign on it. And I'm going to say, I want to warn you. I might say something that's going to make you uncomfortable, and I might ask you to do something that challenges your sense of equilibrium. You see, I'm really a bit impatient when it comes to women's progress and diversity and inclusion. I credit this in part to my mother, who went to Berkeley in the 60s and was a peace and social justice activist in California. That said, I recognize that change is comprised of progress, and progress happens one step at a time. So I simply want to inspire you all to take a next step. I get the opportunity to see the challenges and impact of diversity and inclusion up close. In my day job, I lead web strategy and a diverse team of men and women, including those from the LGBTQ community. I'm also a member of Adobe's Adobe and Women Leadership Council and a mentor, and I serve as the Adobe Utah site leader, heading up our site council of 6 action committees, including one of them around diversity and inclusion. As the site leader, I hear from those who really appreciate the impact of diversity and inclusion, and those who are struggling to understand where they fit in a D&I world, and frankly, feel even a little bit threatened. And so my take is that everyone fits in D&I, and everyone has a role to play when it comes to diversity and inclusion. Because diversity and inclusion is the antidote to the business problem of sameness and exclusion. And when we get where it is that we need to go, we will be in a place where everyone is respected and valued for who they are and invited to grow and contribute according to their strengths and passions. And this can't be change that's just about demographic numbers. It has to be a change about mindset, that everyone recognizes that the everyone part about value and respect, everyone gets it, and everyone has to give it. So at Adobe, we call this effort Adobe for All. We're shifting our focus from the problem statement to the end goal that we have in mind. We still have a lot of programs that are focused on women and specific employee groups, like our Adobe and Women Network, our Women's Executive Shadow Program, our Black Employee Network, and many others. We've also expanded other programs to focus more on the shared conversation. For example, what used to be our Adobe and Women Annual Conference has evolved to be our Adobe for All Conference. And we also have voice and influence circles that bring together diverse groups around certain conversations. And then here in Utah, we have our Diversity Leadership Experience, which provides a mentoring opportunity for people who are part of those underrepresented groups, as well as those who simply really strongly support and value our Adobe for All concept. So we have a lot of fantastic programs. Now, this might be a little bit shocking. In the past, I didn't want to be part of women's groups. And believe me, I have been in countless meetings where there are more men in the room named Jeff than women. So it's not that I haven't been exposed to the problem, but even so, I just didn't feel a need to participate. I've always been comfortable taking a seat at the table and using my voice. But then I came to understand something. I had something that a lot of women didn't. I had a strong mother, a father who told me I could be anything I wanted to be, and a long line of women in my family history who have succeeded in a man's world. And together, all of this gave me an inheritance of expectation that I could do it. And I came to understand that many women not only lacked what I was lucky to have, they actually had influences in their life that told them they couldn't do it. When I figured that out, that made me so mad. And I realized I have to help those women. I have to get in there and help them adopt that inheritance of I can. So I dove in and I started signing up for everything that I could. And in my journey, I have come to recognize a couple of things that I think it would be fantastic if everyone did, and I want to share 3 of those with you now. So the first one, you have to give of yourself. You have to raise your hand for everything you think you can do, and then you have to raise your hand some more. And when you get into those conversations, you also have to be really open, because the challenges and dilemmas that women face radiate to the core of our human being, our human nature. And so the open conversation is important. And here's an example of that. I was mentoring a woman who had recently returned from maternity leave, and she was struggling with that challenge of how could she regain her passion for work while still being passionate about being a mother. And I shared my story with her about when I went back to work after having my first child, which was personally the hardest day of my entire life. But time went on and I regained my passion for work. And by sharing my story with her, I think she got a sense of optimism and also validation that it was both okay and possible to feel passion for both. And then in the course of our conversations, she figured out of an area that she was really interested in, and we talked about ways that she could turn that into a leadership opportunity. Long story short, she ran with it. She ended up creating an opportunity to add tremendous value for her team and the business, and soon after, she was recognized with a promotion. So my takeaway is when you give of yourself and your experience, you can be powering someone's next opportunity. So number 2, you have to advocate with action. Here's an example of this. There was a young woman in another organization who noticed me in some way and wanted to meet me, and she introduced herself and she asked for time to sit down with me, and I gave that to her. And I got to know her, and I was really impressed with her energy and her drive, so much so that I started lifting her up and introducing her to every other leader that we'd come into contact with when we were together, including Donna Morris, our fantastic Chief Human Resources Officer. And then in turn, Donna invited her to sit down with her and have a personal conversation. So my point is, when you are willing to meet people and make those connections for them and advocate for them, it can really power their growth. Another important aspect of advocacy with action are the broader actions that a company needs to take in order to back up the work that employees are doing in inclusion groups. A good example of this is in 2018, Adobe achieved global gender pay parity, and now we are shifting our focus to opportunity parity to examine our promotion and internal movement practices. And again, this kind of action at the company level gives so much, I think, power and energy to the people who are doing it more at the group level, so they really have to go together. And there's a lot of good insight in that in the Women's Tech Council paper that I'm sure you're all having access to now. So advocate with action. The third thing is you have to invite everyone. Our shift to Adobe for All is a good example of how we're reframing the conversation to bring more people into it, but we're also literally inviting everyone. Our site council provides a lot of fantastic opportunities for people to be more aware of certain issues, understand them, and celebrate them. As an example, we recently had an LGBTQ allies event, and we also had a Q&A with a Muslim imam. Now, we normally would just send out an email and post in our newsletter to make people aware of these opportunities, but we, as the site council, were recognizing a lot of really valuable opportunities were having low turnout, and so we brainstormed, what are we going to do about this? And we decided we control the site council calendar that goes to the entire DL of everybody in Lehigh. Let's just put the invites on everyone's calendar. So we did, and we also started reframing the message, because what would happen in the past is if you have an LGBTQ allies event, people might say, well, I'm not in that community, and I don't have any kids in that community, and I don't have any friends in that community, so that's not for me. But the thing is, it's a fantastic growth opportunity, and so we've started writing the messages in a way to appeal to people's curiosity and make sure they know this is an opportunity for them. So how does this work? For that LGBTQ event I was telling you about, by simply putting invites on everyone's calendar, which they can choose to decline if they don't want to come, we had triple the normal number of attendees, so we know it works. So what I found is when you give of yourself, and if you're earlier in your career, if you ask for connection, if you advocate with action and you invite everyone, you're powering progress. And these are things that each of you can run with in your own way that's right for you. So I started, by telling you that I am impatient for change. You see, I have 2 daughters and a son. And I think that the best thing I can do for them, other than love and nurture them, and occasionally run an intervention on really stinky soccer cleats, is help create a future where we don't need diversity and inclusion to be such a hot topic. So I want to ask each of you to get just a little more impatient and turn that impatience into action. And you will each know better than I what that best next step is for you to take. But my specific call to action for you is that at the first break today, I want you all to talk to at least one person about the idea you have about the step you're going to take. And then in the next 30 days, I want you to take it. Thank you.